If you're in the market for a gaming monitor, there are two ways you can go about it. The first boring way is head to whatever local reputable hardware source you have and buy a well-reviewed monitor. Or you can be a real badass who doesn't live by life's petty, reasonable rules and take your chances buying a random high-end gaming monitor from a brand you've never heard of before off Aliexpress. I wonder which one I went with. The monitor in question is this Titan Army 27-inch 1440p high refresh rate gaming monitor, which uses a mini-LED backlight, something that I've wanted to try for ages, considering it can reproduce the kind of brightness used to down commercial airliners. And as you can tell by the writing on the box, this is clearly not intended for the Canadian market. In terms of accessories, we get this 150-watt power brick with an adapter for us to use in the North American market, which is a really nice touch. It's cool that they thought of that, because this cable is for China, some standoffs for VESA mounting, a DisplayPort and HDMI cable, and this is a monitor calibration factory report that looks like it was pulled out of my 8th grade school backpack. I don't know what happened to it, but it's cool that they include this because it shows that with the Adobe RGB space, for example, it's quite accurate, although I will test it myself. I'm not just going to take their word for it. Oh, they did actually test for 2 other color spaces as well. Oh, that is some Christmas doily quality plastic right there. That is about as much I/O as a non-psychopath would ever need. I think these are HDMI 2.0 ports. Oh, it's pretty good. Ooh, so much static. Now that looks exactly how I'd imagine a gaming monitor off of AliExpress would look. It is real plasticky. We've got some Titan Army font going on here. I think from the listing, it does say that some of this lights up around the back. The stand adjustability is pretty good. So you can kind of swivel it like that. You can height select it. I like that. It's not super sturdy, but you know, it's a usable stand, and you can go portrait with it, but it's like barely tall enough to clear the stand. You kind of have to turn it out to get it to swivel around, but still, that is a decent stand and a little bit of cable routing hole. It does seem to have quite thin bezels, and the Titan Army doesn't look great, but you know, it looks fine. It's plain enough that I wouldn't be humiliated if the in-laws saw it. The green and orange does bother me a bit though. Let me quickly see if I'm justified in my outrage over the color matching. Yeah, I'd say my outrage about the color matching is justified here. With that vital bit of information covered, let's power it up and see what it looks like. Ooh, what a graphic. Wow, this is already very bright. I wonder what brightness setting this is at. That looks like an old Alienware menu. Whoa, this is 50% brightness. Now, while I struggle to navigate the OSD menus using the terrible little buttons on the bottom of the monitor, let me tell you why I was so fascinated to try a mini-LED gaming monitor. Now, mini-LED, as the name suggests, uses small LEDs behind the display to illuminate it, which has the advantage of retina-searing brightness. This monitor, in fact, apparently has an HDR 1000 certification. But considering that we're not at the point where mini-LED backlights can have an LED per pixel, we do run into some problems. In fact, this 27-inch display only has 384 zones of lighting, which is a lot less than the millions of pixels that this display has. Now, the reason this is potentially a problem is if you have a very bright thing and a very dark thing right next to each other sharing the same lighting zone. What does the backlight do then? Well, struggle. But struggle in an interesting way. But let's see if the problem presents itself with the first gaming impression. Now this is Battlefield 5 running in HDR because, you know, HDR 1 million and all that. It's something I've not seen before, and Well, it looks like Battlefield 5. The monitor now running at 144 Hz feels nice and snappy. It's a very responsive feeling monitor, but there is some motion blur with fast movement. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but it's nowhere near the crystal smooth image of like the 240 Hz OLED LG panels, but those do cost a lot more. With Battlefield 5, I can't really see any kind of bloom happening, and that's with me specifically looking for it. But there is a game that's a lot darker and more contrasty than this, which may have a problem with it. So the void has descended around me now, so we can more clearly tell kind of backlight performance, and even in the very contrasty menus of Escape from Tarkov, I'm struggling to see any halo around any of the contrasty bits, and I think the reason for that is because this monitor has pretty bad IPS glow, which means that the black levels aren't really deep enough for me to see the haloing. I think that's the problem here. Which is something that becomes clear when you start moving around the display. Off axis, you can start to very clearly see that halo show up, which pretty much invalidates one of the other benefits of a mini-LED backlight, improved black levels, because the backlight isn't the limiting factor here, the IPS panel is. In this configuration, it just looks like a wildly bright IPS display, which isn't a bad thing. It measures very well. Interestingly, the measured contrast is crazy high for an IPS display despite everything I just said, but to my eye, the main benefit is the wild brightness. And the max brightness is very impressive, if a little redundant. I did turn it down quite a bit because it was almost uncomfortably bright. But then I decided to quite unfairly compare it to the OLED display that Corsair recently sent over, which is unfair because that display is a lot more expensive. Whoa, the first thing that I noticed, aside from the inky black levels on the OLED, is the OLED is so much less bright than that Titan Army. I was just playing Dota on that Titan Army monitor, and at 83% brightness, it is way brighter than this OLED is at 100% brightness. And a direct comparison between these two displays really puts into perspective how powerful that mini-LED backlight is. And I think even the factory color calibration is more accurate on our Aliexpress special. But because of the OLED's lack of IPS glow, aside from just the significantly darker black levels and lack of backlight glow, the image seems way clearer. The Titan Army in comparison almost seems like it's got a grainy filter over the image. But on that note, I've gotten a bit carried away comparing mini-LED and OLED Willy sizes. The point of this video was, Aliexpress gaming monitors. Now, I'm actually very surprised by this Titan Army display. From the sample size of one, apparently you can get pretty good gaming displays on Aliexpress. Although, we do still need to discuss price, which is a very interesting topic with this display. I paid about $500 for it, which for a mini-LED display is actually not that much money. It's a very expensive technology. But for a gaming display, it is quite a lot of money, and considering that this feels like a normal IPS display just on a bit of steroids in terms of brightness, I feel like it's too much for what the monitor is. But either way, I was quite impressed with the display, and it's really sold me on the value of insane peak brightness. That's something that OLED displays really need to figure out over the next coming years. Yeah, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the display, and I think that brings me to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Until the next one, bye-bye.